Recording in progress. We got it. Let's see. Dun, dun, dun. I'm so excited. So before I actually start, just a heads up. So what's today? Today's the 6th. So I think the next 2 Fridays, I believe, I'll confirm this. I will be here, but the week of the 21st, I'm doing my advanced teacher training in California for a week with Lee Holden, and I am so excited. So I get him um, for I think there's about 12 or 15 people for 5 days. And it's like all day long, like from like 8 in the morning until 5 in the afternoon. So I hope to come back with some really good stuff that I can, be a funnel for him through to you for this good practice. But so that particular week, because of the time change and where I'll be, that class won't be going on. But I'll remind everyone also. So I just wanted to give you a little heads up. I'm very excited about this, by the way. Been waiting for this for like 5 years. Uh, and it's in Santa Cruz, California. So it's gonna be hopefully nice weather, not too warm, not too cool. And we'll be, I think, by the ocean. So really fun. But let's get started. So let's do some wave breathing first. So one hand on the lower abdomen, so just below the belly button, and the other hand on your chest. And let's start the breath from the belly. Let it start below and then rise up like a wave, expanding the rib cage up into the chest. And then exhale from the chest, rib cage back to the lower abdomen. And then we're starting to, when we say integrate and align the lower dantian that's associated with the body, the middle dantian or elixir field with the center of the chest or the heart center. And then the upper dantian is our mind / consciousness, spirit, whatever you want to call what makes you you beyond what we are physically. And I was just talking to someone that, or maybe I said this in the last class, but I think Lee was saying in one of his older or prior teachings that mastery, QiGong, right? The skillfulness of working with our energy happens when our internal chi, our internal environment of flow is in congruent. It's in congruence with the external environment. So there's a constant exchange and easefulness of exchange of energy that we pull in, and it's disseminated and it's integrated. Then we exhale or we release energy, and that gets composted by the world around us, nature, trees, the earth. So there's this constant, easeful exchange of energy, and we no longer worry. Wouldn't that be wonderful? So, meaning if our bodies, the physical body is feeling good and healthy, that has a direct impact on how we are feeling emotionally. We know if we're in pain, that has a tremendous amount of impact on how we're feeling, our emotions and our mind, and then vice versa. Stress and worries in the mind can cause the body to contract, and that causes energy to stagnate. So when everything, we're filtering in what we want to bring in and letting go of what we want to let go of in an efficient manner, we feel integrated and whole. And then let's drop the arms down and open the eyes. And let's go into a wider stance for our spinal cord opening exercises. So you can keep a little bit of bend in the knees. And let's start with a wide-legged knocking on the door of life. So there's going to be a little bit of a weight shift. So if we kind of shift the weight from the right foot to the left foot, and then start integrating the rotation of the hips and the waist, And then we start to build the momentum, knocking across the lower abdomen, the lower back. You'll feel it's just a slightly different sensation, right? The hips are a little open. There's a little bit more of a pumping action when we start to shift the weight from the right foot to the left foot. So we start knocking on the body, helps to activate or free up stored potential, stored energy, right? We have to mobilize it first, sort of like when we have a piece of wood and we light a match and then all of a sudden we have a little fire, right? That is releasing stored energy in the wood. It's literally releasing the energy, the sunlight that's stored in that wood. It just needs a little catalyst. So we are using this motion, this knocking, as a way of catalyzing, hopefully that's the right word, or releasing the stored energy that's in our muscles, in our tissue, in our bones. And then come up below the collarbone. And then all the way to the top of the shoulder. So this is the first part of class, is we're starting to mobilize energy. Then we go into some activating, clearing, stretching to make sure that the lines of energy are nice and open. And then we go into these slow movements. So we have a balance of yin and yang, yang more active, yin more kind of quiet, receptive. Come back down below the collarbone. And then back down to the waist. And then start to slow down. So we're going to do a little spinal rotation. So we're going to keep the legs wide. And what we're going to do is take your left hand, okay, bring it across. So your palm is facing the side of the room. Bring it across your face and then start to continue to rotate, pressing that left hand towards the back of the room. So your palm is facing the back of the room. Your other hand is just going to kind of scoot around the back side of you so that the palm is facing the front of the room. So you're pressing in one direction and then the other. So towards the back of the room and the front of the room. And then you can just gently turn and look over your right shoulder. And then unwind, come to the center. And as we do, that hand that was in back is going to come across the front of the body. And we're going to rotate in the opposite direction. So that hand comes all the way across. And now your right hand is reaching towards the back of the room. And your left hand scooches around and faces the front. And then look over your left shoulder. And then slowly unwind. And then we'll go in the opposite direction again. So we're rotating first from the waist, then the upper torso, and then we turn the head. So you're kind of corkscrewing your spine, but pressing towards the back of the room and the front of the room simultaneously helps to create a little bit of tension, almost like you're wringing out the spine and the organs. And then unwind, come to the center, and then we're going to turn now over to the left again. And then inhale back to the center. So again, that back hand starts to move across the front of the body. And then over to the left again. Back to the center. Let's do one more time to each side. And then let's come to the center. Now let's bring the feet back to, we'll say, the neutral stance. And let's do some spinal cord breathing. So inhale and look up, bring the hands right by the sides of your head. And then as we exhale, curl the spine forward so your chin tucks down towards your chest. And as you do, just imagine that you're creating space in the lower back by letting your tailbone drop, like it's reaching towards the earth. So inhale, unfurl, and look up. And then exhale, curling forward. The chin tucks down towards your chest on the exhale. And inhale. And exhale. So again, we're creating a slight pumping action, pumping fluid through the spine. We're also opening the front of the chest, the space between the shoulder blades. And we're breathing slowly. So exhale as we come forward, nice slow exhale, and a nice slow inhale as we open up. Inhaling and exhaling, creating a nice balance between the stress part of our nervous system, the sympathetic, and the relaxation, which is the parasympathetic nervous system. So we're creating a more balanced energy between those two. And then one more inhale. And then exhale, the arms drop down. Okay, so now let's go into now our spine's all nice and loosey-goosey. We're going to go into some clearing and cleansing exercises. So arms out to the sides. Take a nice inhale and a very sharp exhale through the mouth as the arms drop. Inhale through the nose. And now we'll turn and rotate on the exhale. Turn and rotate back to the center. Turn and rotate back to the center. And there is I'm just going to show you a little pumping action of the knees. So it's a bending and straightening of the knees. And we start to use the breath as well. Inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth as a way of clearing and cleansing. What are we clearing and cleansing? Just anything that is no longer useful. Instead of saying, I don't really want to call it negative energy, but sort of like anything that has been sort of sticking around, whether it's kind of energy that you've taken on from a certain circumstance or things that are happening more global, right? Or just sort of like a physical ailment that's been kind of maybe feeling better, but might have some additional residue. We're just using the breath and this movement as a way of helping to release some of that. Even just emotional, like stagnation or physical stagnation, right? Helping to pump some energy through the body, using the breath to create some space. And then we start to slow down. Yeah, and once things start getting a little more mobilized, you might feel some heat being generated. That's where circulation improves in our extremities, but also the internal organs. Let's do one more. Let's do Tiger Clears the Way. So it's the similar pumping action of the knees, but we'll start with the hands above the head, hands in our tiger claws, and we'll go slowly for a few rounds. So as we exhale, the knees bend as the hands come down, right? And now the hands extend out to the sides as your knees straighten. And then bend the knees again as the hands come down, and then straighten again. So it's a bending of the knees and straightening, bending of the knees and straightening. And then we start to pump the legs. And then again, you can inhale through the nose and a nice forceful exhale, clearing the internal environment. We're like weed whacking here. But instead of, and it's always debatable, what is actually a weed, right? It's in the eye of the beholder. But for you, what is there that needs to be cleared out that's kind of causing too much static and preventing you from feeling the way that you want to feel? And start to slow down. And let's just pause here for a moment and notice how we feel after doing an invigorating and cleansing exercise like Tiger Clears the Way. So now we are going to go into this is a more, we'll call it a kidney centric strengthening exercise, which we've done before. It's called Turtle. So it has a lot to do with breathing into the area of the kidneys, the area of the door of life. So before we go into the turtle, which I will demonstrate, let's do some kidney breathing. So let's take the hands and place them on the lower back so that your fingers sort of meet right at the center where the spine is, and your hands are approximately where your kidneys are. And for kidney breathing, you can bend the knees just slightly. And then as we inhale, imagine that you're sending the breath into the areas of the kidneys so that you're using the breath, you're pushing your hands away with your breath. And just let your tailbone drop down slightly. So the opposite of this, in case that's a little bit hard to understand what that actually means, if I do, I'm going to be very exaggerating here. So this is the I believe an anterior pelvic tilt. What we want to do instead of this, imagine that you're creating space by allowing the pelvis to shift down slightly. And then hands on the kidneys, and then nice slow breath, breathing into the space. You might feel your back slowly or subtly expand on the inhale. So this is the breath that we focus on in the turtle. So sending the breath to this area. So with the turtle, make your stance a little bit wider than shoulder width apart, and then your toes are slightly turned out. So instead of facing forward, just slightly. So if this is new for you, I'll go through. There's 3 levels. The first level is that we just bring the hands on the thighs just above the knees. So you're using your hands as a way of supporting your weight. The second is to bend the knees a little bit more, so dropping the pelvis down so that your elbows are on your knees. And then the third, which is a little more strengthening, it takes a little bit more leg work, is to just bring your elbows the inside of your knees and slightly press into your knees. And then let's come up for a minute. So again, first is hands on your thighs. And when we do this, you want your back to be pretty straight. So we don't want it curved and we don't want a big concave thing. We kind of want it nice and straight. And then this is what it looks like if my elbows are on my knees. With turtle, the chin will be tucked down. And then the third is actually, let's just keep, for this one, let's just keep our elbows as the more advanced. I don't even want to call it that, but more strengthening is the elbows on the knees. And then come up for a minute. So when we go into either of those versions, we'll stay there for about 20 seconds, and we're just going to slowly breathe into the kidney area. So it's really good for generating strength in the legs. It's really good to breathe into the kidneys. And then when we slowly roll up after, we'll go into very slow, deep, descending energy movements to balance that. So it's generating a lot of energy and then bringing the energy down and storing it. So let's do that again. So feet a little wider than outer hip distance, the feet slightly turned out, and then come either to this position, so your hands are above your knees, or your elbows are on your knees, and then tuck your chin down slightly, so you'll be looking towards the earth, and then slow breathing into the kidney area. So your hands are not on on the lower back. Just imagine what that sensation was like when they were, and just focus on inhaling, expanding the lower back. So the breath is in through the nose and out through the nose. One more breath. And then if your hands are not on your thighs, put them there and then slowly roll up vertebrae by vertebrae. It's normal to feel a little lightheaded because that was just generating a lot of energy. And now that energy is expanding. So you might feel this sort of rush of energy that's flowing through your body. We'll just notice that. And then very slowly inhale the arms out to the sides, all the way up slowly above the head. And then exhale. So now we're bringing that expanded energy back to the center and then all the way back down. So this is the counter to that expansive yang centric movement and energy is slow breath, slow movement, bring everything back down. And then inhale. We're working with these 3 energetic centers, the lower, middle, and upper Tan Tien. On this next exhale, let's bring the hands, so you're gonna overlap the fingers and the thumbs touch, and then bring it right in front of the lower abdomen, just below the belly button. So you're not touching your abdomen, it's like a few inches in front, and then make slow circles. So we're storing that energy that we just generated. So out of the 3 energetic fields, this is the area that we want to store energy. If energy is stored in our up here or in our minds, it's too much. We have too many thoughts racing. There's too much turbulence. even if it's not bad energy, but it's too frenetic. So we want to store it down here. This is where we want to store that energy. So let's go back into turtle one more time. So again, either hands on your thighs or your elbows. Tuck the chin down slightly. See if you can get a sense of your back being straight. And then slow, deep breathing into the kidney area. So on the inhale, see if you can feel your lower back slightly expanding. And then exhale, inhale, and exhale. So we're improving the breath. We're improving energy being disseminated through the body. And then hands on the thighs, slowly roll up. Let's close the eyes, pause, just feel that rush of energy, that expanded energy. And then slowly inhale the arms out to the sides, all the way up. And then slow exhale back down. Inhale, almost like you're gathering all of that expansive energy, right? And just starting to direct it to the center, flowing down, and then storing it in the lower abdomen. One more time, inhale. And again, let's overlap the fingers. So the fingers are touching, and then the thumbs touch all the way back down, and then small circles. And then let the arms drop down. And let's just do very gentle shaking before we go into our flows. Just to very, very lightly kind of activate and release anything that's sort of still left over. We just generated a lot of energy. So we don't need this to be very big. These movements can be small, just a little shaking. Release the shoulders down away from the ears. Relax your jaw. Relax the space between your eyebrows. And then let's slow down. Okay, so we'll go into a few flows that still have to do with these three treasures, the lower, middle, and upper. We're going to use a little color with these flows today. So the lower abdomen, the color that's associated with that is a white light. So more like the sunshine at about noon. So it's more kind of bright and more whitish versus sunset. So the middle dantian, the space at the heart center, is more golden light, like a sunset. And then the third dantian is if you were to draw a line from the crown of your head down the center of your brain, and then right between the eyebrows and then to the back of the head. So where those two lines would intersect is they call it the crystal palace. It's the center of your upper dantian, and that is a blue violet, an ultraviolet blue light. Okay, kind of where the not insignificantly where the major glands of the brain are. The hypothalamus, the pituitary, the pineal gland are all in that area that sits behind the forehead at the center of the brain. So we're focusing on that. So with swimming dragon, let's first keep your hands on your hips, and we're just going to slowly rotate your hips. So you feel where the movement will be coming from. So your upper body is nice and relaxed. You're moving from the hips. So if you can feel your hip bones, the interior superior iliac spine, which is the little pointy guys here, just imagine that this is where the movement's coming from, nice and slowly. We want your hips to be nice and open and relaxed. And then we start to include the arms. So as the left hip comes forward, the left arm will float forward. And when the right hip comes forward, the right arm flows forward. So what that looks like is if we're on the right hip and that comes forward, the right arm floats forward, leading with the back of the hand. And then as that right hip pulls back to center, you're going to spiral the hand in like you're grasping something right into the center here. And then the left hip rolls forward as the left hand comes forward, and then inhale, spiral into the center. So it's just a very gentle spiraling forward and then spiraling back in, leading from the hips. So we exhale forward, inhale back to the center. Exhale, and we start down at the lower dantian. So if you're imagining, if you want to use the colors, imagine that as we reach forward, what we're grasping is this tendrils of this white light and bringing it right into the center. So you're grasping and pulling it right into the area right below the belly button. And that white light, we pull in and it gets stored in this lower elixir field. So you can even imagine that as we pull these tendrils of white light in, that white light starts to swirl into the lower dantian, giving it some power. So exhale forward and inhale. You want to inhale and draw that in. And there's a fluidity here. So just imagine that you're just swimming. You're just allowing the hands to crest through the water, right? As your hips are moving and swirling right to left. And then we'll now move up towards the heart center. So now as the left hip comes forward, the left arm reaches forward more at the height of the heart, and then you're drawing right into the center of the chest and then down. So as you pull in, that opposite hand is facing towards the earth. It might be too much to think about all at once, but as you're drawing in, then you're sort of letting anything go that it's creating taking up too much space that you're ready to let go of. So we're drawing in now this golden sunset color right into the center of the chest, and then letting go of any kind of stagnant energy that this light is helping to clear out. Tendrils of this golden light that's right into the center of the chest. Still moving from the hips and the waist. So your arm is just an extension of that. Right? Helping to not only tap into the energy that's around us, but how do we draw it in and help it circulate through the body, through our emotional center, through our minds to create clarity, peace, easefulness. And then we'll move up just in front of the forehead. So now the back of the hand comes out in front, and then you're drawing right in towards the center of the head and then down. And this is a brilliant violet light, maybe even a little indigo, some form of a brilliant purpley blue, right? And as we draw in, we're pulling in, and it's filling up that center of your brain, our mind, our consciousness, creating illumination, relaxing the shoulders, moving from the hips and the waist so that there's not a lot of tension in the upper arms. And then come back down in front of the heart center, back to that golden light. Going nice and slow. And then back down the lower abdomen. And that brilliant white light. Drawing it in, it's circulating. And then bring the hands close together. Keep moving your hips right and left. It's almost like a figure eight, actually. And then we'll just start swirling that, spiraling the hands. Imagine that you're mixing all of that together. And then let's come back to the center. So your hips are now just facing forward. Let's hold our chi ball for a moment. And then let's work with those three same centers. Now we're just going to help churn. Now that we've pulled in, illuminated these areas, we're going to go into the wheel. So we're going to keep the palms facing one another, kind of closer to you. And we're going to inhale and just let your hands come up like you're pulling that ball of energy up the center, right in front of the forehead. And then exhale, that arms come forward and then back down. And as we come down, bend your knees slightly so that we're sinking down. And then as we inhale that ball up the center, we straighten up a little bit, rise up, and then exhale as we extend forward and back down. We sink back down towards the heels. Inhale and exhale. So imagine that ball of light, we're just drawing it up the spine, right into the crystal palace, that center of the mind. And then as we exhale, that energy is coming back down. You can even imagine that there's a reflected ball of light at the back of the spine. And as we inhale and draw that up, the ball rises up the back of the spine, center of the brain, our consciousness. And as we exhale, that ball of light now is descending down the front of the spine. So inhale. And exhale. Creating this wheel. It's churning slowly. Energy rising up the back and then down the front. Inhaling through the nose as we rise up. Exhale through the nose as we descend back down. And one more. Let's inhale. And let's bring that ball back down. Let's do that storing one more time. So the fingers overlap, the thumbs touch right in front of the lower abdomen, a few inches away. And then these little small circles storing energy into the lower dantian. And then let your arms drop down. And let's just finish off with a few pulling down the skies. Inhale, arms out, and then exhale, they float back down. And inhale, and exhale. And as we exhale, bring the feet together. Now let's have the hands one on top of the other. Now you can place them right on top of your lower abdomen and take a few moments. Feel the strength that you've just cultivated, that inner fire, that inner glow, but simultaneously very open and relaxed. And when you're ready, you can crack your eyes open. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm just going to pause this.